Hi Reddit. I have always been a big fan of this social media, and so I see it sufficient to post about my situation here, to solicit and get some advice from you guys, and to also share my story. I feel like some people could learn a lot from it, especially those currently cheating or planning to cheat on their partner. I am currently in a very tight spot and need help. My name is Mia, and I am a 30-year-old woman. I've been married to my husband Ethan, who is a 32-year-old man, for 6 years. We dated for 2 years before getting married. We have 2 kids, Lisa, who is an 8-year-old girl, and Nicholas, who is a 6-year-old boy. We live in South Carolina in the United States. It is a small town, but we are happy with it. My husband grew up here, and his family is quite wealthy and connected here. Ethan and I first met in an escape room LOL. We instantly connected and took to each other like fish to water. There was just a beautiful spark between us. A bunch of years went by since our first date, and you know what? The spark between us is still kickin'. I'm crazy about my husband. He gets me, nails the whole dad and husband thing, and goes all out for our kids. Our bedroom action? No complaints there. It's active and awesome. No, we make it a point to squeeze in date nights every weekend we're not drowning in responsibilities. Overall, our married life is like living in a dream. But let's be real, we're far from perfect. He's got stuff I wish he'd tweak, and I've got my own list of changes for me. It's those quirks, though, that make us a perfect mess together. But here's the kicker. There was this small hiccup. I messed up, started cheating. Yeah, it's like this dark cloud hanging over our otherwise kick-ass marriage. I got caught up in something messy at work, and honestly, I can't pinpoint when or how it all went down. All I know is I ended up having a thing with a coworker. It's like this secret I stumbled into without a clear start. It's not like there was some big plan, it just kind of happened. Now I'm stuck dealing with the fallout from it. The start of this whole mess traces back to about 6 months ago when my affair partner and I both joined the company and began our training simultaneously. Even in those early days, something felt off. I noticed he was unusually friendly, especially towards me. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe he was just a sociable person. The thing is, the more I tried to ignore it, the more he seemed to crank up the friendliness. It became this weird thing of him being extra nice, and me trying my best to downplay it. It was like this unspoken tension building up, creating a strange feeling that I couldn't shake off no matter how hard I tried. Jason, my coworker, was this handsome and sociable guy that everyone at work seemed to adore. He had this reputation as the fun guy, always bringing positive vibes to the office. What puzzled me, though, was his extra effort to be nice to me. It felt like he went out of his way, and I couldn't quite figure out why. Then, after about a month or 2, Jason applied to transfer to my department. Now, that really threw me for a loop. I couldn't wrap my head around why he'd want to switch, especially considering we didn't have any special projects or collaborations. Things got even stranger when we were both at a coworker's wedding. Jason, in his usual outgoing manner, tried to dance with me. I had to put my foot down and refused, explaining that it just didn't feel right or proper given our work relationship. Jason's relentless niceness was like a never-ending loop. Whenever I told him to ease up, he'd apologize. But the very next day, he was right back at it, trying to get close to me. The weird part? I could have easily taken it up with HR, but if I'm being honest, there was a part of me that enjoyed the attention. He had this knack for noticing every little thing about me and showering compliments, especially when I changed up my look. It was a daily routine for him, complimenting me on stuff my own husband wouldn't notice. It felt like I finally had someone acknowledging my existence. To be completely real, I started dressing up at work just to get those compliments from Jason. It became this strange cycle where his attention filled a void, even though I knew deep down it wasn't right. However, the day I finally went all the way with Jason happened during a coworker's birthday party. The workplace had this tight-knit vibe, and we all tended to be quite friendly. Whenever there was a celebration, like this coworker's birthday party, we'd all get invites. The atmosphere was laid back and everyone was having a good time. It was one of those moments where work boundaries blurred and we could just relax. Jason, true to form, was there, and the social setting made it easier for his charm to work its magic. The usual friendly banter took a turn, and before I knew it, I was falling into Jason's trap. At the birthday party, Jason stuck to his routine, giving me a compliment on my appearance that genuinely brought a smile to my face. As the night progressed, the drinks flowed freely, and before I realized it, I was a bit more than tipsy. The details of when things took a turn with Jason are hazy, but what I do remember is that, in the moment, I found myself enjoying it. The aftermath hit me hard the next day, though. I had cheated on my husband. Regret flooded in, and I made a solemn vow to steer clear of Jason. Frustration and anger boiled within me, leading to a heated confrontation where I cursed him out and explicitly told him to stay away. In an attempt to cut ties, I even went ahead and blocked him, attempting to put an end to the situation that had gone out of control. The enjoyment I experienced during that moment with Jason was something I couldn't admit, even to myself. The days that followed were heavy with guilt. I reached a point where I couldn't face the idea of going to work and encountering Jason. In my confusion, I called in sick, using it as an excuse to seeing Jason, as I was still so ashamed and angry. My husband, unsuspecting, had asked about the birthday party. I gave him the edited version, claiming it went on as usual and that I'd gotten a little tipsy. I conveniently left out the part where I got drunk, spent the night there, and sent him a text message explaining that I'd stay over at a friend's place to sober up. When he offered to pick me up, I declined, assuring him everything was fine. In reality, I spent the night with Jason. There was no way my husband would recover from that. Returning to work after those tumultuous days away was a challenge. I attempted to keep my distance from Jason, but that resolve only lasted for a brief period. Within a few days, he was back to being overly friendly, disrupting my efforts to maintain a professional distance. He'd bring me coffee, grab lunch for me during his break, and flash random smiles my way. Attempting to address the situation, Jason assured me it wasn't my fault, but his. He apologized and urged me not to worry, emphasizing that what my husband didn't know wouldn't harm him. His attempts to comfort me was surprising, but what I desperately need. He even suggested I unblock him so we could talk after work. Now call me stupid or silly and you would not be wrong. I messed up big time. Jason kept pushing, and against my better judgment, I unblocked him. The guy's texts were annoying yet weirdly comforting. He'd send good morning and good night texts, blab about his day, and keep saying it wasn't my fault. He even suggested we could keep our thing going without my husband knowing. And stupidly, I started buying into Jason's words. His texts, persistent as they were, messed with my head. On one hand, I was annoyed by his constant messages, but on the other, I found myself questioning my own stance. After all, what my husband didn't know would not hurt him. Jason didn't waste time breaking through my defenses. Before I knew it, we were in the middle of a secret affair. It was pretty easy to keep it hush-hush since we worked together. We'd sneak off to the restroom during work hours for our secret meetups. I get it. It sounds dumb now, but in the excitement of it all, I was oblivious to how messed up the whole thing was. To throw my husband off, I cooked up a story about wanting to boost my career, saying I'd be putting in more hours at work. Despite my husband being worried about me stressing out, considering he earned more and could handle our bills, I convinced him not to stress. His higher earnings also meant he had more time for the kids, which became handy. While he played the responsible parent, I used the excuse of working extra hours to chill at Jason's apartment after work. We'd either wait for everyone to clear out before our secret bathroom meetings or just head over to Jason's place. Looking back, it's clear I was tangled up in a mess of lies and messed up priorities. Jason had this knack for making me feel like I was the center of the universe, like I was the only one who truly mattered. I found myself smiling more and getting all pumped up to go to work. Sick days off work became a rarity. My husband noticed my newfound enthusiasm for work and said he was glad I was happy. But he also pointed out the obvious. I was neglecting the kids. He was right, but back then I was oblivious to it all. I started tuning out from parenting responsibilities, leaving all the childcare to my husband. Even when I was home, I'd hole up in our study, pretending to be engrossed in work when, in reality, I was deep into texting Jason. The kids started to voice their complaints, wanting more time with me. I'd brush it off, explaining that mommy had to work. This continued for weeks, and my coworkers began noticing the change. Jason and I were suddenly closer, and I wasn't giving him the cold shoulder anymore. I even went to the extent of leaving my car at home sometimes, so Jason could give me a ride back to his apartment. Looking back, I realize how dumb that was. Anyone could have seen me sitting in Jason's car, lol, and someone did see me, lol. But at the time, I thought it was some romantic move. The whole situation seriously had me wrapped up in a cloud of oblivious choices and misguided notions of romance. There were numerous signs, almost like the universe itself was trying to send me warnings to put the brakes on this whole affair. Looking back, it's clear that these cautionary signals were scattered throughout my journey, yet I foolishly chose to turn a blind eye to them. The first hints appeared in the form of my own guilt, a nagging feeling that should have acted as a red flag. Then there were the moments of hesitation, those brief pauses before responding to Jason's messages when I could have reconsidered my actions. Even my kids' complaints and my husband's concerns served as glaring indicators that something was amiss. As if that wasn't enough, my coworkers started noticing the change in dynamics between Jason and me, and the risky behavior of leaving my car behind just to share a ride with him was a glaring signal. It's almost comical how the universe threw these warning signs my way, and yet, in the whirlwind of emotions, I remained oblivious to the impending storm. It's a realization that hindsight often brings. The universe had been dropping hints, trying to redirect my course. In my stubbornness, or perhaps sheer ignorance, I chose to ignore these signals just because I loved the thrill of my affair with Jason. One time, my husband's sister actually caught me riding shotgun in Jason's car in the middle of traffic. It's a miracle she never spilled the beans to my husband. Or maybe she just forgot, as she tends to do sometimes. Another possibility is that she thought she must have been mistaken since I managed to pull off a quick, inconspicuous duck when I spotted her. That moment could have blown the lid off the whole affair, but somehow, luck was on my side and the secret stayed safe. Everything seemed like a typical workday until it all hit the fan. Jason and I were our usual flirty selves at work, sneaking off to the restroom for a quick, intimate session. During lunch, he brought me food and we chatted like any other day. We planned to head to his place after work, so I messaged my husband, telling him I'd be working overtime for a few extra hours. He was cool with it, already home and ready to watch the kids. Perfect, right? Work wrapped up, and as I headed to the parking lot, Jason was waiting for me. A few coworkers stopped to chat, and one even asked if everything was okay between Jason and me. I spun this tale about how we'd become better friends after I realized it was wrong to give him the cold shoulder. She seemed skeptical but didn't press further, just nodding and letting the conversation wrap up. Now it's important to note that I knew Jason wasn't exactly Mr. Clean in the lifestyle department. He had a thing for drugs, but he was a functional addict. If you weren't super tight with him, you wouldn't guess it. Dude looked good, stayed fit, and had this glowing vibe that didn't scream drug addict. But here's the real kicker. Jason wasn't just into using. He also dabbled in dealing, and he kept a stash at his place. One time, he tried to get me on the weed train, but it wasn't my thing. Swore off it real quick and never gave it another shot, lol. I finished chatting with the coworker and made my way to meet Jason in the parking lot. Feeling a bit hungry, we decided to swing by McDonald's for some takeout. After grabbing burgers and fries, we headed to Jason's apartment. Once there, we dug into our food, catching a movie as part of our usual routine. Then we started getting intimate. Things took a wild turn when, mid-intimacy, we were interrupted by a bang on the door. Turns out, it was the police. Panic set in, and I started scrambling to get dressed, but Jason urged me to calm down, assuring me they probably didn't even have a permit to search him. Maybe they just had a few questions, he said. We reluctantly opened the door, only to find ourselves immediately arrested. Shocked was an understatement. They flashed a warrant and proceeded to ransack Jason's apartment, uncovering not just weed, but also some serious hard stuff. Both of us ended up in cuffs. But here's the kicker. As they were dragging me away, they dropped the bomb that it wasn't just about the drugs. Oh no, they believed I was in cahoots with Jason, tagging me as a dealer too. And if that wasn't enough, they threw in adultery and infidelity. The shock hit me like a freight train. Infidelity? My mind raced. Did my husband report me? Did he somehow know about the affair? Living in South Carolina, where the laws against infidelity are no joke, added an extra layer of dread. Fines or even days in jail were on the table, and the last thing I wanted was to end up behind bars. In a desperate attempt, I tried explaining to the police officer and lying that I was clueless about Jason's illegal activities. However, my pleas fell on deaf ears as the officer insisted on waiting until we reached the police station to hear me out. So, I begrudgingly stayed quiet during the journey. Once at the police station, they separated Jason and me, leading us into separate rooms for intense questioning. Overwhelmed with emotions, I broke down in tears and spilled the truth to the police officer. I admitted that I was married and had been cheating on my husband with Jason. I made it clear that Jason was fully aware of my marital status. However, when it came to the drug aspect, I decided to lie. I told the officer that I had no idea Jason was involved in drugs, that I never took any substances from him, and that he never disclosed his drug-dealing activities to me. My tears flowed freely as I confessed. I insisted on having my lawyer present. Recognizing they couldn't detain me without pressing charges, the police informed me that I was free to go. However, they strongly recommended I get legal representation, emphasizing that their investigation would persist. They also said I would be called to testify against Jason in court. Of course, to save myself, I quickly agreed. As I was about to leave, one of the cops called me over and dropped a bomb. My husband had snitched on me, giving them Jason's address. They said they usually wouldn't spill the beans, but my husband insisted that they tell me. To rub salt in the wound, they hit me with the news that I was now no longer welcome at home because of my cheating ways. I couldn't hold back the tears, and I literally started crying again. The cops weren't exactly sympathetic to my tears, their expressions showing clear disdain for my infidelity. Despite their judgment, I resolved to go back and beg my husband for forgiveness. So I hopped into a taxi and headed home. But let's be real, what did I really expect? When I arrived, I found all my bags neatly stacked on the front porch. A cold and unwelcome reception, to say the least. Devastated, I knocked on the door, but there was no response. To say I was distraught would be an understatement. I stood there for hours, crying, but it became evident that either they were purposely ignoring me or they weren't home. Left with no other option, I had to gather my bags and find refuge in a hotel for the night. I couldn't even go back to Jason's apartment because he had already blocked me. They had released him, but it was clear he was under investigation and might end up in jail. I am currently in the hotel room, and I feel utterly lost. The weight of the situation has me in complete distress, and I've been crying for hours without a clear idea of what to do next. Attempting to reach out to Ethan, my husband, has been met with silence. He won't pick up my calls or respond to my texts. Even reaching out to my in-laws, Ethan's parents, has proven fruitless as they refuse to answer the phone. My family lives in another state, and the distance makes it challenging to seek solace with them immediately. I am hesitant to travel tomorrow because my priority is to repair my marriage with Ethan and also work. I can't just up and leave. What do you think I should do, Reddit? Please help. Update. Wow, okay, it's been a month since I made that post, and I never expected the post to blow up like this. I've gotten numerous DMs asking for an update, so I guess I owe you guys one, so here's everything that has gone down since. First of all, living in a hotel for a month, no matter how budget-friendly, turned out to be a financial burden. I've had to switch hotels twice in search of more affordable options. On top of this, the heartbreaking reality has set in. Ethan and I are heading for a divorce. After a few weeks of enduring his silence, I reached a breaking point and sent Ethan a heartfelt text, pleading for him to act like an adult and talk to me. Thankfully, he finally relented, breaking the ice and replying to me. We arranged a meeting in a neutral place, a restaurant. It was disheartening to see that he didn't bring the kids, but I understood his need for caution and lack of trust. The entire conversation was gut-wrenching. When he asked me why I had done it, I couldn't come up with a single excuse. The weight of his disappointment was so sad, he told me I had shattered his heart. That Ethan revealed that he was the one who called the cops on Jason. I admitted that I knew, as the police had informed me at the station. Ethan explained that he had instructed the cops to tell me because he had initially planned on cutting all ties with me. I couldn't help but wonder how he knew about Jason's drug involvement, but Ethan simply claimed he had sources. When I asked him about discovering my infidelity, he shared that he found out in various ways. He had seen my text messages with Jason and even had screenshots. Additionally, he claimed to have heard it from people in town, including some of my coworkers who had approached him. I was crushed, I couldn't stop the tears. All I could say on repeat was, "I'm so sorry. I love you. I never meant for this to happen." But he wasn't buying it anymore. The trust was gone. Ethan said he wanted a divorce for our mental well-being. I broke down even more because he made it clear he couldn't get past what I did. The lies I fed him only made things worse. He laid it all out, talking about how he handled everything at home, babysitting, taking care of the kids, while I lied about working late, actually spending time with Jason. The mess I created had wrecked my marriage. Ethan laid it into me. He had been the one carrying way more weight, earning more than me, taking on all the responsibilities, and he didn't even mind that. He reminded me of how absent I was from the kids, absorbed in my own world with Jason. Ethan confessed that he had known about it for a while, hoping I would change, but I never did. He admitted that he believed I wouldn't have stopped if he hadn't made the call to the police. It was like a reality check and a wake-up call. Ethan slammed the door on forgiveness and told me it was never happening. He told me divorce papers were coming. He wanted custody of the kids since he had proof of me being absent a lot in their lives. He asked where I was currently staying, and when I told him a hotel, he teased me about crashing in a hotel and questioned why I wasn't bunking with Jason, making me cry even more. He then told me he was taking the money in our joint account. I couldn't complain, it was majorly his money, but he promised to leave me a little to get by for a few weeks. Ethan said he'd shoot me a text when the divorce papers were ready. When I asked about the kids, he assured me we could meet up next weekend. Despite the fact that I had hurt him, he promised not to keep me from seeing them. But he made it clear that fixing things with the kids was on me, as they'd grown distant during my absence. It hurt, but I couldn't deny that Ethan was speaking the truth, and the weight of my own actions hit me hard. After our heart-wrenching conversation, Ethan left. He even footed the bill for our drinks at the restaurant and left the waitress a tip. I'm still waiting for those divorce papers. When they come, I won't put up a fight. I know I deserve every bit of it, and I'll sign them without a single complaint. It's the least I can do after everything that went down. As for Jason, let's just say he's become a ghost in my life. I haven't seen or talked to him in a while, and truth be told, I don't even care about his fate anymore. I'm still expecting a call from the cops, and when the time comes, I'll testify against him without a second thought. That's the whole scoop on what's been going down recently. Appreciate you taking the time to listen. Here's a nugget of wisdom for everyone out there. Steer clear of cheating on your partner. Seriously, it's not worth it. Take a lesson from my missteps, back to square one for me because, well, I made some dumb choices.